Thank you for joining us for what I think is a very special podcast. I go back to the uniqueness of what is Jefferson R-7 and the podcast we shot earlier with the original principal, Mr. Ruark and Mrs. Richardson, the first counselor, and just kind of the perspective of the adults. And today I'm joined by two adults now, but at the time we're part of the first graduating class here, and that's Brendan Hall. Welcome, Brendan.
Thanks for having me.
And Haley Null. And I can tell you what I'm excited about these two is that I can remember speaking with them back when they were in high school, and they're both very well thought out individuals. To Haley's graduation speech that caught the moment so well, and then Brendan's just energy and the conversations we would have around the building. So it's a pretty special day for me. I wanted to start off with a question, kind of as you get to the end of the moment. You had the graduation week. We actually had this first graduation on a Saturday night to kind of clear the deck, so to speak, and make sure the building was clear. And there was a lot of work that went into that. The governor was there. But I have to imagine that, I know what it's like as an adult trying to get ready for it and make sure everything's right for the kids. But what were your experiences even that week and for that day?
After you, Haley.
As always, I like to talk. No, I think it was kind of weird in the sense of we'd never really done that before. I think a lot of people in our situation as seniors have gone through 2 or 3 graduations where they're graduating their friends who are upperclassmen and have seen the sadness and the happiness and gone through the whole, 5 stages of grief and all of that. And we did not have that. We were blissfully unaware of, what that was going to look like. So I think we were just kind of there for a good time. And I mean, I was a little nervous because, that was a big crowd. But, we were really close class and we did our whole little senior campout, in that week. And so I think we were enjoying the good time.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Was that your idea? I've been trying to figure out who came up with that.
I don't know. It feels like it.
People know what's going on is that we had the graduation on Saturday, and I know as a staff member driving in Monday morning, they're still sitting outside the building waving at us in chairs and tents, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Is that right? You guys stayed the Sunday night into Monday morning, correct?
Absolutely. I believe our entire goal was to make sure that we were there when the underclassmen showed up. Our presence was still known. And
yes.
It sounds like something I would do, the most innocent act of rebellion to exist. So.
Yeah, I think it was a Sunday. I got a group text. Hey, bring a tent. We're camping out at the high school. We just left. We're going back already. But yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks to how special this place is. We graduated.
Yeah, who wants to come back that early?
Yeah, but it's almost like we didn't want to go our separate ways because we just grew up together, so small, and it's just a special thing.
So let me ask that question while we're talking about that. The first day of school, and you did a great job last year at the PTO of speaking to that group about walking into a building. There's only one class in there. There's hardly any staff in there. There's 4 classrooms. I think you guys are still walking to the middle school for PE. Mm-hmm. What was it like? I mean, what was that experience like for you?
Unique. I think that's the best word you can describe it. It's unique. We trying to think of the best way to say this.
You're taking 4 core classes, I believe, and then you had art. Was it art?
And I know,
and music.
You said gym, and then I know at one point we were driving buses back and forth for band, and
because we had to do shop over here.
Yeah.
So we'd start the day out over here, and then we'd go back over there for, the little bit that we had over there. It's just so crazy to think about now. There's 300, 400 kids there now. Yeah. That whole building was just home to 70 of us. I mean,
it's kind of crazy.
It's insane,
We had that conversation before that I mean, the building was ready enough to allow people in the building, but other than that, I think the standards were pretty low. So I know there was no security system, and people's parents were just kind of showing up and hanging outside the doors. making sure everything went off without a hitch. And, meanwhile, again, we never knew what to expect. So I guess you couldn't disappoint us because
Yeah.
it was a brand new building.
It was very, very Thunderdome back in those days. I mean, for lack of better words, I remember the first day Mark, Mr. Ruark, we didn't even have bells. He would just stand in the foyer and blow a whistle as loud as he could. I guess he used to be a coach back in the day, so he was good at it. And he would just stand there and blow a whistle every 4 minutes, and that's how we knew we had to be where we had to be. Couldn't really get lost because there was only about 4 or 5 rooms we went to.
Did you guys eat lunch over there?
Yeah, we did.
Just the one class come in. That's got to be unique. That's something you don't. I
I
wasn't there for
think
that.
I believe we only had. Did we have one lunch?
It was just
period?
one back then, yeah, because there was only. I feel like it was 73. It couldn't have been more than 75 people that first year.
And 3/4 of the building was like off limits. Like
Wow.
Yeah, the
Harry
gym-
Potter, like the restricted areas.
The
you
gym wasn't
couldn't-
even done yet.
Did you guys have lockers at that point?
We did.
Okay. Was that kind of a late addition to get the building up and running?
I don't remember. I know that one corner that we've talked about had that little set of lockers on that bottom floor,
Okay.
and I believe that's what we
Maybe
used.
that's what it
but-
was. They may have had to add more as the
Yeah.
year went on and getting more students in. So I want to back up. What were your impressions of that initial graduation week? Yes, you guys had the camp out. Were you just done with it? Were you?
Well, it's funny. I was flipping through a senior yearbook right before our reunion a couple weeks ago, and I saw in our who's who or whatever, I actually won worst case of senioritis. So I was done. I was ready to go, but you got to remember, my situation was very unique. I was enlisted already in the Army, went to basic training.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I went through basic training Fort Jackson, South Carolina in June of 2012. So I spent my whole summer after my junior year basic training, throwing grenades, shooting guns, learning how to fight for this country. To get thrown back into
High school.
high school. I don't want to say a child's environment because, young
Be
adults.
honest, it was a little bit.
It was a
though.
kid environment, I come back here 2 weeks before, I'm throwing grenades. I'm getting screamed at by drill sergeants, swearing every other word, as you do in the military. Come back here, and I have teachers yelling at me about homework and Haley planning prom or homecoming things.
Throw me under the bus.
I'm just,
That
you're
would've
the
been-
person I think
Haley
of.
and I would have been doing that probably.
Yeah,
we
and I'm
learned the
looking-
homecoming stuff.
And I can't help. Shame
Come on,
on
Brendan,
me.
you didn't care about the prom colors? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I didn't. But, shame on me, 10 years later looking at it. But I'd look at those things and be like, who cares? I'm just ready to go. I was ready to grow up, more or less.
I will say this, and this is from an outsider in at that time, that you are right. There was always, like every other district I've been a part of, there's this sort of this kind of way everybody did things. And you guys were the first. I do think there was so much attention paid to that I think there was a little bit of, I don't want to say friction, but I think everybody was a little bit tired of getting to that moment because there was nobody. You guys were doted on the whole time, if that's the right word.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that because you had it was the first time we had done anything. I think your class was really exceptional though at setting the tone for things. The graduation ceremony, first and foremost, but also like homecoming and different events that we do. There's still things that go on to this day that I still think of this Jefferson as a new high school. It's not. But I still take a lot of pride, especially around homecoming week and graduation week, of those that got everything up and running. I still think about that quite a bit. So let's talk about your class. One of the items maybe, Brendan, you brought up was kind of the class of misfits.
Yeah.
And it was, I'd heard when I got here, they said this is kind of an interesting group to have as your first graduating class. So
That's putting it politely. So thank you for such the kind words. Yeah, I mean, we were so small. I'll preface it by saying I'm a transplant to R-7. I didn't get here till 6th grade. You're a lifer, aren't you?
First grade, yeah.
Okay, that's basically.
where'd you go to kindergarten?
I was the only kindergarten class that we care in Festus, and then they got rid of kindergarten. I don't know if it was me or the other students, but I think they were one and done. So
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that.
But yeah, I mean, my mother, she's a speech pathologist for Fox School District. So for kindergarten and first grade, I went with her. Second, third, and fourth, I went to the Catholic school here in Festus, Sacred Heart, which is closed now. And in fifth grade, I went back to Fox. And sixth grade, I ended up here finally. So I had to go through that process, which, you know, troubling on a young boy, girl, whatever you want to call it, you know, having to make friends over and over and over. So when I finally got here, and, you know, Fox, their classes are 500-600 kids, whatever it is. When I got here and saw how small it was, I'm like, this is weird. I mean, it was weird. But, you know, within a couple months, I knew everybody. You know, it's hard not to, being so tiny. You run into everybody, see everybody. And, yeah, it's just everybody knew everybody. I felt like I could rely on anybody, you know, from that age up till we graduated. Me and Haley, for example. You know, you have your friend groups, you know, the people you relate to the most. And the most interaction we usually had most of the time was saying happy birthday to each other because we were born on the same day.
Birthday buddy.
We are birthday buddies.
Small world.
Yeah. But I knew from 12, probably even, to, you know, to now, but whenever she was living at her home, if I needed something, my car was broke down here, I could walk over to her house, knock on the door, be like, hey, Drew, need some help. Can you give me a hand? Yeah. Who are you? Haley knows me. Oh, cool. And he'd come up and help me. And that's just one of the things that makes this area, this school, so unique. It's probably still like that to this day, I have to imagine. I mean, it's been 10 years. This place is growing beyond anything I would have ever imagined. Probably anything you ever imagined, but I imagine it's still close and tight-knit like that. So.
I'm still new enough. It was new enough time I didn't know what to expect. But what about your take kind of on the dynamics of your class? You guys are good in a lot of different areas.
And you and I have had this conversation many times, just even planning the reunion and things like that, trying to find the groove of things that we thought this class would be interested in. And I feel like it was always a little bit different than what you would imagine, because I think it was the perfect class to just kind of go with the flow. And nobody really had any expectations going into those 4 years as to what, you know, was going to happen, what wasn't going to happen. And, you know, these friendships were created. And I think it was just the perfect amount of, you know, rebellious but young kids. And, you know, everybody was just kind of enjoyed things as they came and stuck together when things got rough. And I think, you know, that made for a perfect class to kind of go through that trial period together, because I think we kind of acted in ways as mentors for those couple classes underneath us. And it was always our goal, like just the perfect amount of, you know, we want to give them a typical high school experience. We're going to try to be upperclassmen, but we don't know what that means because we've never had any. So I think, you know, we tried our best. And I mean, we're still standing, you know, a little while later. So something went right along the way.
Well, and you do learn, like you learn things a little differently, which has that experience itself helped, or how has that helped you in your careers or decision making? Because you kind of have to take more ownership, and sometimes you might hear maybe what other people have done in their high school career, and you're like, well, we didn't do that, or we did it this way. Did that help shape you at all? Kind of the uniqueness of that experience.
I'd say that it definitely helps you with the figure it out mentality. You know, I'm a blue collar man. I'm in the trades, transportation. Sure. I've done both railroad work and now truck driving work. A lot of things don't go out of plan, and a lot of times you don't have a plan. You just got to figure it out. So there have been times, you know, when something I plan out there in my work does not materialize. I think back to, well, you guys, you know, as the staff, having absolutely, I mean, you really don't have a history to look back on. Mm-hmm. So you had to look at us and be like, okay, we know what we need to do. We know what these kids need. How do we do it? Yeah. And I can't imagine the amount of work and the amount of stress that you guys are under to do that. I mean, I can only look at you now, you know, as the superintendent of this place, and you have a roadmap to follow.
Yes.
I can't imagine just walking in here. You got here when we were what, juniors?
It was your all's junior year.
Okay. So I can't, you know, there still really wasn't an end game. Nobody graduated yet. So you
Right.
guys had to figure all that out.
There were some things, some loose ends to tie up for sure.
I can't imagine having to figure that out with nothing. But yeah, it's shaped me looking back.
What about you?
Absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, I left here and went to Mizzou, and that went from big fish in a small pond to small fish in a big pond. And people fully did not understand trying to explain the dynamics of a graduating class of 76. And then also, by the way, there was nobody above us. We just, decided to start a high school one day. And, I think people had trouble grasping that. But I definitely think there's a fear going into that of, okay, am I going to get there? And is this just going to be totally overwhelming? And, how am I going to respond to a whole different atmosphere? But I think the one thing that I never counted on that ended up being such a blessing in disguise was staff and students alike. You don't really have a choice but to ask for help when you need it, because there is no established protocol. There is no established practice for those 4 years. And so we just kind of either made our own rules or asked for help. And so, you get to a big place like Mizzou, and, I went to nursing school and graduated from there. And I was never afraid to find a resource where I needed it. And I give a lot of credit to my high school experience for that, because there was never a fear to ask for help or to ask questions or to reach out, because everybody was just so willing to, be on that ship together. So
It's interesting to hear your both points of view on this. And a guy I want to give a lot of credit to, because I think if you go back to kind of that earlier podcast, there was a lot behind the scenes of trying to get it right.
Yeah.
But Mr. Ruark
Absolutely.
really just did a great job of, every meeting that we had with him that you guys weren't a part of, and actual planning really stemmed from, this is about the kids, make it about the kids. We talked about the graduation, make it about the kids. And I think the uniqueness of the situation, what I noticed coming in is that I always took a lot of personal great pride in relationships you have with students, very positive professional relationships, but you could really sense it. And I think that has continued, and it's something we really preach. And I know people that transfer in or they come in as a new employee, or the kids, they'll say, your teachers really care about us, and that's important. But I really think it started with you all, Mr. Ruark's leadership. I think that has continued forward. So that being said, one of the questions we talked about, what are some staff members that made that experience unique? Because it was a little different for me to see really how close the staff and the kids were. And it was almost like there was a lot of guidance on, okay, this is how we do a pep rally, this is how we do different things. And so kind of some staff memories and the uniqueness of that situation.
Well, the first one I can think of, you just said it, Mark Ruark. In some ways, he was a principal to a student, but to me, he was almost just kind of like a friend. And I'm still in contact with him to this day. Blessed to know him. He was particularly helpful to me when I came back from the Army, and I had to go back into school. I spent a lot more time in his office than I probably should have my senior year, for just being, acting like I guess the best way to say it, a man stuck in a boy's world. In the Army, my drill sergeant said it best: we teach you how to say the F word 15 times in a 5-word sentence. And it's true. And I'm sorry, but so I let some words slip, so I was in his office a lot for that. But he never beat me up for it. And years later, actually at the reunion, he said, or it wasn't at the reunion, but he said this to me at some point. He's like, going back to the not having groundwork to lay on, he kind of said it. We really didn't know how to handle you. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't know how to handle me? He's like, Brendan, you were an enlisted member of the United States Armed Forces as a student.
Well, I'll say this. I think you probably were the first one as an athletic director at the time that it never dawned on me. none of your days, because you came back a little bit late for football, I believe, and you couldn't count any of the. Here you're in boot camp, and you can't count any of those days towards a practice. So I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I got back. I graduated Fort Jackson August 9th, and I think we started school August 12th or something.
It was early that year. Yeah,
I only had a couple days of summer. Yeah.
yeah.
But he was real gracious to me, and I always, to this day, I still appreciate that. Just a couple more I can think of off the top of my head. Mike Herman, our shop teacher, me going into the trades, he was always very supportive of those of us that didn't want to go the college route. You know, at that age, I thought I was going to be I wanted to work on the railroad since I was a little boy, and I thought that's what I'd always do. But he always had a lot of good advice for us. Those of us that didn't want to go the college route, wanted to work with our hands. He was always very, very helpful. And finally, and this is going to come as a shock to maybe her and some other people, but Kristen Wilkie, she's kind of that teacher that I look back at. She, like the one that never gave up on me. And I caused her so many migraines. I know I did. My senior year, I had her for 4 hours of 7 because when I came back, all the classes were full, so I just kind of got worst case of senioritis again. I didn't care. You know, it's like, whatever, just put me wherever you need. So I was with her 4 hours a day. By 7th hour, I had a job afterwards. I was usually napping in her class the whole time. She was up there talking. I'm just sleeping. I felt so bad. The reunion, the first person I found was her. I said, I am so sorry. Thank God for 10 years of maturity and wisdom. But, you know, she's the one I can think of. I mean, nobody gave up on me. You know what I'm trying to say.
There's certain things that stick out to you.
Yeah, she was hard on me because she could see my potential that I was just sleeping through. But she stuck with me the whole time.
So Miss Wilkie did a great job, and I think it still continues with student council. It's the most vibrant student council I've ever seen. You know, everybody can be a part of it as long as you meet. It's a neat process. Who were some staff members for you?
You know, I'm hard pressed to think of a staff member in that initial crew that didn't, you know, contribute to all of our success like tremendously. And, you know, first and foremost, Mr. Ruark and Mrs. Richardson, I mean, just the guidance that they provided in a time where we had no idea what was going on was just, you know, so pivotal in the way we were, wherever we went, whether it be college, whether it be, you know, out into the workforce. I myself with aspirations to go to a bigger college, and there were so many opportunities that I didn't even know existed and I would have never known existed that they found for me. You know, I got to attend Missouri Scholars Academy in between my sophomore and junior year, and this is something I would have never heard of, but they brought all those opportunities to us because we didn't know any better. And, you know, looking back at my resume, that allowed me to get into extracurriculars at Mizzou and really pad that resume and even contribute to jobs later on in life, all started because they provided that framework. So, you know, I think they both were just huge assets. But really, I mean, every teacher and staff member that I came across in those first few years, I think the key thing that made it stand out versus another experience is that they taught life lessons just as much as they taught school lessons. And absolutely. I think in a regular established high school, teachers are just, you know, not to say by any means they're not doing their job, but I think it's more focused on academics and let's get you through high school. And I think our teachers, even though at the time we didn't realize they were 22, 23, 24 years old, they were just babies themselves, and they were, you know, giving us these big life lessons and teaching these immature little kids who didn't have role models how to go out in the world and be successful. And, you know, my coaches, Coach Nagel, Coach Dreyer, Coach Wilkie, you know, it's like it didn't matter if it was a sport, if it was a class, they were throwing in some little life lessons in there too. And I think, you know, we all owe them a lot for the success that we were able to get out of here with.
Yeah, and I mean, I only pointed out a few that just stick out in my mind, but building on what you said, everybody you came in contact with that you spent a lot of time with really seemed to care about you, about what they're telling you, about what you're getting out of this. And I think that goes back to the uniqueness of how small we are here, because they see you all the time. So naturally, less, you see less people on a daily basis. You get closer, So, they all did. They all contributed to me in one way or the other.
I thought they did a great job too, because coming into that team when they were, Mrs. Richardson and Mr. Ruark were 2 years together. Me coming in year 3, we could have those discussions behind closed doors about kind of our experiences in other districts and maybe how things should be. And Miss Richardson was just amazing at looking at all the protocols and stuff, the real boring technical stuff of getting a high school up and running. Mr. Ruark had such a grand vision for things, but that it didn't come back and say, well, we're doing this because this school does it. It was taking the bits and pieces of our experience and being willing to look out. And again, I think that goes back to trying to make sure it was your experience with kind of that guidance. I can tell you as high school principal in the following years, it didn't go away, but it wasn't quite that was a very unique experience because you guys were with that staff for 4 years, and there was you guys knew each other backwards and forwards, and really by the time what you would say your sophomores and freshmen coming through, there was just a little bit different feel of the building because we had 4 years of it. It was just a little different. But I thought they did an amazing job of setting the table for a lot of great things to come. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. I could not imagine what it's like to have been fifth, sixth grader, and then get the news that, my goodness, we're going to build a new high school in this district that, we had kids served so well in so many other districts. Primarily it's centered around Crystal City, Festus, and Herculaneum. Did a great job with our kids for a long time. And then there was this new high school that was starting. So what was that like for you all? I'm going to start with you. I think you told me it was 7th grade. You were 13 years old.
I believe it was somewhere right around maybe midway through 7th grade into 8th grade. That was kind of an ongoing situation. And I mean, that was definitely an intense time for, a very young adult, early teenager, and knowing that it was just the established tradition that you might spend 8 years getting to know all these people in this school district. They become your best friends, and then it's day one on your freshman year if you guys split up into different schools. And that's kind of what I was being faced with. I knew that, my group of friends that had become my very best friends, we were all going in different directions. And I knew with the wild success that Jefferson R-7 had K through 8. You just knew that there was going to come a time, it was inevitable, that the school was going to expand. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, why not us? And I totally understood where the opposition came from in the sense that it's scary to take that leap and just hope that your child, isn't a guinea pig in a failed experiment. Sure. So I understood that, absolutely, but I just knew that it was going to happen, so why not happen now? And I just hoped that it would be us, because I said, I'll take any high school experience you'll give me if it means I don't have to leave all my friends and leave the place I've called home. And
I never really thought about that from the sense of you have these friends and all of a sudden, just by nature of the school ending, I guess it's sort of like you're leaving high school now. You split up and go to colleges, but there were enough percentages breaking off that I could see where you're coming from on that. Very interesting. What about yourself?
Kind of hard to top what she said. She said it perfectly. I was just more thrilled. I was thrilled when they announced the high school because I didn't want to move again. Like I said, I moved schools 3 times before I came here. So I finally felt settled in. I had buddies, closest friends I ever had up to that point in my life. And, we all sat around having a conversation, 7th grade-ish, I guess. Where are you going to go? I think the choices were Festus, Crystal, Herky. I feel like St. John might have been sprinkled in there at one point. Most of mine were going to Crystal. I was probably going to go to Festus just because I felt like they had more things to offer than Crystal City did. And 7th grade, I feel like it was 7th grade. So I think, if I recall right, it went to vote for the high school twice, once in April and once in August, I think.
that sounds right.
Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to remember those details, but the first time it failed because it needed like 57, 58%.
It failed by 4 votes.
It failed by like
It wasn't like
4.
50%, it was 57, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
needed.
I mean, it was that. I remember being really bummed out about that. So I looked at my dad, you know, everybody had signs in their yard and all that. This community really wanted it. But there's some people, you know, that liked the tradition of having that choice, and I respect that. But I think the vast majority of us in that class, when it failed the first time, were really disappointed. Because I don't, like she said, I don't think many of us wanted to go our separate ways. We wanted to stay together because we were so close because we were so small. So then that August rolls around, and I remember the newspaper article, it passed by 11. 11 votes out of however many. And then you look at that and you're like, wow, this is going to happen. This is great. And I'm just overjoyed. Like I said, I don't have to move again. I'd gotten good at it, and I didn't want to be good at it. So
It was a tough time for the whole entire community. I don't
absolutely.
This community may or may not ever see division like that again, and I think it at the time, you know, my dad was on the school board, so I saw a very specific side of things, and
sure.
and at that age, you know, you really are kind of a reflection of your parents in a lot of ways. But some of my very best friends, you know, were spearheading kind of the opposite side of things, and it trickled into the school, and then all of a sudden you have 13-year-olds arguing in the hallways about this kind of thing, and it definitely was very inflammatory, and it was an odd time. And like I said, I totally, looking back now, could see both sides of it, why parents of kids in that situation would not be comfortable with their kids being the first ones, but then also why parents would love for a school district as successful as R-7 to have the opportunity to teach their kids for 4 more years. So it was very trying time here in the community. But
I don't know who called me. It may have been Mr. Ruark, but this is when you guys were freshmen, and I was down the district activities director at North County in Bonne Terre. And I got a call about this school, Jefferson, and I didn't even know about an R-7. I'm like, what are you wanting to get into a girls' basketball tournament? I think you guys were sophomores. And I know we got the softball team in, got some of the track stuff going. And I had, after that phone call, I'd take like 15 minutes. I'm like, what's a Jefferson R-7? Like, I had to look it all up. So that's kind of the other angle coming into it. It's just, you know, a whole new deal. But so what are some of your fondest memories? You guys were you in band at that time?
I was not a band kid.
I was a band geek.
But you were the
for sure.
MMEA.
Yes, yeah.
I think, you know, you look at early on, student council and the music program were like rocket ships, just going forward. And then it took a little while for the other activities to kind of catch up. So what was it like to go to a competition or go to the MMEA as Jefferson R-7, kind of this new group? Was there different? Did you feel anything different or?
Well, as far as MMEA goes, we were pretty on top of the world. You know, we felt pretty good at that time. I remember being like, well, really, the band is the most successful part of this high school so far. Nobody cares about that, but here we are. But it's funny that you brought up basketball too, because we owe a lot of that to Mr. Ruark as well, because we traveled hours south to find games to play at the beginning.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, that makes sense, because everyone's like, what is this school and why would we put them on our schedule? And Mr. Ruark had to beg, I think, a lot of personal contacts. And, you know, that team, we had played together for a very long time, since we were, you know, probably 7 or 8 years old. And so we wanted some varsity play. We wanted, you know, to play the big teams. Well, that ended up being a lot of Southern teams. And I don't know if that was a blessing or a curse, because it was a little rocky there for a couple of years.
The first time I actually met you and your dad. You were at the North County tournament.
You're going to bring up my concussion.
I am. Because you smacked your head on the floor. Like,
did,
oh my
yeah.
goodness. And you were out of it for a little bit. But that's the first time I was like, and you guys were just sophomores. I'm like, is this the right thing to do here? But it all worked out, and been a rocket ship ever since. So what about you? Memories? You played football.
I did.
Did you play baseball?
No, I was a football and track kid.
Track, okay.
I did track my freshman, sophomore year. Not because I love running, but I knew I was going into the military even back
Gotcha.
then. So I'm like, well, let's get some 1 miles and 2 miles out of the way.
There you go.
Let's just get ready. Football is what I fell in love with. Took up a lot of my time, spent a lot of time in the weight rooms and everything.
And but where was the first weight room? Tell everybody where it was. Do you remember?
That was in the choir room.
The first weight room was in the choir room
right.
of the high school.
That's right.
That whole area where it's at, I think it existed, but there was a plywood wall or a drywall.
Well, I was there today. They took a sledgehammer to go through there and look.
Yeah.
It was fun.
And didn't they go scope out some old weight equipment from some
Central
other
Methodist University. That's what all of our weights were. It was beat up, rusty, but it worked. It don't need to look pretty. But yeah, so that's how that started out. I think on our first team there was maybe 15 of us, which
And you guys didn't have lights.
no,
The other thing I remember is that, of course, I was here. You had 5 varsity games your junior year. We played like 3 Illinois schools and 2 Missouri schools, if I recall. Or maybe it was 4 Illinois and 1 Missouri.
it was 4. I think it was 4 Illinois, 1 Missouri, because I remember the one Missouri being scary. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah. It's a neighborhood I never want to see again. Yeah, our first varsity play for football was rough.
But your JV games, even to that point, were still almost like Friday night football games on a Monday night. And we had no lights on the field.
Yeah, we had no lights. We didn't get lights until we were seniors, I don't think.
No, you had them for your senior year.
Yeah, our senior year we had lights. Had our field our sophomore year. But
And the little bitty bleachers that came down from the press box.
Yeah.
You know?
But let me tell you, though, the support that this community gave for a JV team
That's
that was
huge.
not going to go to state, obviously, because you can't. That first game, I think they said there was like 1,200 people out here on a Saturday to watch us play St. Pius. And that first year we went undefeated, JV. So that was pretty cool. But, yeah, this community came out in droves for that. It's like they were starving for some local football to watch.
And then the visitors show up and they're like, why is it like a Friday Night Lights
Yeah, they're like,
episode
what-
here
they're
for
like, what are
these
people
15-year-olds?
It's Saturday. Go do something. But no, we were all ecstatic about it. It was awesome. You know, as a player, you kind of, dare I say it, you felt kind of like a star, you know, playing in front of all those people.
That's awesome.
So that was really
No,
special.
I think you had a great following for there was so much interest and so much enthusiasm. You know, your band concerts were in the gym. The choir concerts were in the cafeteria. I do distinctly remember those. And I remember sitting in the back of watching a choir concert and the milk machine was kicking on and I'm like, I don't know if this is the best place, but we made it work.
Yeah.
You know, back in those days, there were no batting cages out front. Half the parking lot in the front, the other parking lots where the PAC was. It was just a different world. It was
I remember them installing those sound panels in the band room, and I was like, "Whew, we are cool. We are ahead of the times. This is awesome. It's futuristic."
Yeah. I remember wondering what those pointy-looking tiles were in the weight room. I remember one of us...
Those are for when
at
you
the
sing
top,
while
yeah.
you're lifting
Yeah.
weights.
Well, the thing is...
There's no clinking in the weight room. It was just all absorbed by the...
I'll never forget. I remember one of us was lifting 400 pounds deadlifting or something. We dropped the weight, and one of those tiles fell out and landed on the ground. We all thought we were going to get kicked out of school for that. We're like, well, you guys are lifting heavy weight in a choir room. Things are bound to happen.
Yes.
But it was just so. It's funny looking back at it now.
Yeah, and there was no tile on that floor. It was all concrete.
It was all
looked like a
con-
weight room.
It was like a
but the
half finished room.
The top part looked like a choir room. It was just kind of an odd deal.
Yeah.
Okay, let me jump back here. Impressions or memories 10 years out. Like, I think anytime, any adult that goes through the high school experience, you go through college or you go into the trades, or you go into the military, 10 years out, you kind of look back and what is it like for you all to look back and know that you were the first one? Maybe even kind of what you're seeing now, like how different it is, or...
I think, again, you know, we just always come back to how it was a different experience. By no means will anyone ever experience that again in this district. But my biggest takeaway was everything that everyone was worried about. You know, would there be deficits as a result of this situation? Would we be at a disadvantage? Would this affect our ability to, go out in the real world and be functional adults when we were just kind of stuck as kids for 4 years here. And I think coming back to that 10-year reunion and talking to all these people I haven't talked to in 10 years, and then some people that I keep regular communications with, it's like every single one of us went out into the world and did something different. And now we're coming back 10 years later, and there's every career you could ever imagine. People, are doting on their kids. And it's like 10 years later, we all came back and we're all as normal as one can expect. And so I think despite this odd experience where we were all just kind of winging it together, we all went out in the world and did what we were supposed to do and had great experiences. And as Brenda and I have talked about in the past, we took different paths and, just as anyone might when they're leaving high school. And I loved my experience at Mizzou, and I felt almost better prepared for it as a result of coming from this school. So, I was actually just very thankful to have the experience I did, and it made a good talking point.
I know there's a lot of data points you can put out there about schools, but one thing I always kind of look for is when your kids leave, when your students leave, are they washing out and coming back home, or are they able to? And I think from day one, and you guys, a lot of testament to you all. When you left, you went and did it, and it was kind of neat to see everybody come back for that gathering we had, the 10-year reunion back in October. And, you two, both as individually, speaking to you all, and know how close you are to your own kids. This is the first district I've been in as long as I've been in, and I haven't experienced that, so that's been awesome. You guys are so passionate about your own kids. I think that's what R-7's all about. At the end of the day, you can talk about a lot of things, but I think the strength of this place is just the commitment to the kids is as strong as any place I've ever been. And I'm not saying it's not strong at other places, but it is uniquely strong here. I think there is a sense of there's no government. This is it. This is what we do out in R-7. And kind of your thoughts, kind of that 10-year out. You've been great talking about your different experiences, but for you personally, just the reflection.
Special. That's the best word I can think of to describe this whole, being here from 12 to 18 and starting the high school from scratch and just as close as we were. Special. A privilege. I didn't appreciate it back then. I don't think anybody does. When you're a kid, I don't think you appreciate just how special of a time it is. Worst case of senioritis 2013 here will tell you I did not appreciate it. If I had a regret, 10 years looking back 10 years later, I wish I wouldn't have been in such a hurry to grow up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if a student listens to this, I'm going to tell you personally, enjoy this time, because 10 years from now, you're going to look back at all the good times you had, whether it was just sitting around laughing, joking, talking, pulling pranks, whatever it is.
You guys never did that, I don't think.
Yeah, we did. I pranked you.
I don't know what you're talking about, Brenda.
Oh, yeah. Disclaimer. We never did that. 2013 class was the best class in R-7 history. But what I'd say is enjoy these times. And you said something a few minutes ago that really just got me thinking. How we love to dote over our kids. She said it at the reunion. Who would have thought Brendan Hall would be the proud doting father of a little girl? And I am. She's the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. But I think it's cliche, and I'm sure all parents do that, but having the kids be the focus of this community, like you said, not having a government or a mayor or anything like that. Everybody that lives out here is so passionate about Jefferson R-7, where it's going, where it's been. I think that really has shaped us, whether we know it or not, into how we handle our, how we care about our kids, how we care about what they're going to do, where they're going to go, things like that. And might I just say, while I'm thinking about it, on behalf of the rest of the class 2013, good job to the two of you putting that reunion together. What a lovely, lovely evening. My wife thoroughly enjoyed herself.
I give a lot of credit to her because we sat down the first time, just like this podcast. Really, we wanted to get some different perspective.
Sure.
And she came in and I think Haley hasn't changed much in the sense of just how she approaches things since I met her in high school.
Yeah.
And that is getting something done so others can enjoy it, but also taking, particularly with the reunion, to say, I want to make sure this isn't about Haley. This is about the class of 2013. Mm-hmm. So we were actually that was some of the first meetings we had when we sat down to do this, because I think that reunion is probably very much, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you all or if I shared it that night, but I remember Mr. Ruark and I standing on the stage after the graduation, and he said, there'll probably be better graduations, but there'll never be, this is the first. Yeah. And I think there's a lot to that, you guys were the first varsity sports. Had that crew come through with leaders ahead of them, would their results have been different? It's very possible. Because you're trying to figure things out for the first time. But on the flip side, you need the first group to do it and kind of set that standard. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like it was a high standard. I know academically there was about 6 or 7 of you and really that's kind of the percentage I think is in a small class, classes of 70 that were really, really strong. I mean, we had, was it 5 of you all in the first that got 30s on the ACT? Yeah. I think there's 5 of you in that first class, and we've had no fewer than 3 every year. It's really been an impressive, that was one of the things that we talked about with the Blue Jay Foundations, to put that 30 ACT wall up. So academically, athletically, that's hard. Starting something new, and I'll say this, and I'll be quiet because this is your show, but one of the things, you never know what you do in life that, like, you kind of ask yourself, am I doing this now for this, or is this teaching me to do something later? My first job, I was at St. Dominic, and I was their head football coach in a brand new program. And I failed at some things there and learned. When I got here, I had that whole different lens of, you've got to take care of certain things when you're putting something new in. And so that and the struggles that went so much better for me here. It's kind of neat to hear your struggles maybe in the high school experience have helped you in your own life. And I think we forget that sometimes. It's okay to fail. It's okay for things to not be perfect and turn out okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. I'm sitting here as superintendent. I love Jefferson. I love it through and through. Grew up in southeast Missouri. I know it's a special place, and it really is special because we look at kids. Do you have any advice for me from your experience there, or looking forward, myself or others, to kind of preserve? Because there's a chance this place will, you mentioned how it's changed. We haven't had that population growth yet, but it will come.
Yeah.
What do we need to do to make sure we preserve what the R-7 experience is about?
Try, and I don't know if this is possible or if it's just something that has to happen naturally. Try to keep that, even if we grow to 600 kids in high school one day, try to keep that small town, I don't want to say love, but that small town relationship, that small town kind of feel. Like I said, I feel like growing up, I could go to Haley, ask for help. She'd help me, things like that. And I don't even, like I said, I don't know if it's possible because I've never been in a big school.
Right.
But that small atmosphere, that, caring, loving your neighbor, caring for your neighbor kind of atmosphere. I think that's important to maintain that or grow that as much as you can. Because that's, like I probably touched on it earlier, that's by far my most special and cherished memory of my time being here. Awesome. And the friendships that came out of that.
I think for me, the thing, looking back, it's like fear of failure is built into me as a person, but going to this school made it feel safe to fail and safe to experiment and safe to kind of spread your wings, and you knew that you were supported no matter where you went. And I think that kind of encouraged me to take the leap and get involved in so many extracurriculars and clubs and sports. And as you touched on earlier, I spent those 4 years worrying about how can I make this experience good for us. But then it became, moved to Columbia and love it there to this day. But the goal was always to make it back here when I had children, to give them the experience that I had, because I felt like it was such an integral part of my success later on in life, and the things that I did and enjoyed after I left school. I felt like R-7 laid such a solid foundation to not be afraid to try new things and not be afraid to fail, because the staff here was just so supportive, and so there wasn't anything you could ever want for that they wouldn't try their absolute hardest to make sure you were set up for success with. And so I wanted my daughter to be able to come back to this school and feel like she could be whoever she wanted to be, because the staff just truly cared about people just as much as they cared about students. And so that's something I valued so much when I left. And I said, if I can do anything I can to make it back here in time to give her that same experience here. So I would say, it's always been that way here since I can remember, but not losing that intimate feel of a small school with staff that really just cares about the students.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm trying to do that same thing that you said. I told you I brought my wife to our reunion, and I told her for the 5 years we've been together so far, she asked the St. Louis question, where'd you go to high school? I told her, and she gave the standard, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Where?
Absolutely.
We're so used to that.
Just south of St. Louis. That's
Yeah.
what you go with. Anytime you're out of St. Louis, I live south of St.
I mean, she's from Columbia, Illinois. She never came this way too much. She's like, I don't even know where Festus is. But, I told her about how special it was, how, everybody knows everybody. And I told her, I said, we're going to get to this reunion. It's probably going to feel like we never even left. And that's exactly what it was. But she didn't really understand it. Her class was 100, 120, something like that. But she comes out here and gets to know everybody and hears the stories and all that. And we're driving home in the car, and she said, I get it now. I said, you get what? She's like, I get why you love it out there so much. What a great place for a kid to turn into a young adult. So hopefully, my little girl just turned 1, and we live in the Festus School District currently, but if all goes to plan, I'll be living out here again one day.
Awesome.
Not just because I think it'd be cool for her to go to the same school I went to. She touched on it all perfectly. Just for our kids to have that same experience. Not the same, obviously, because we were the first, but to have that same
feel,
that same kind of care that R-7 gives you. I think that would just be a great thing to happen.
And I'd say 10 years later, if you've got people flocking back in the district to get their kids enrolled in
You're doing
kindergarten,
something
you're doing
right.
something
You
right.
are.
Well, it's not.
Absolutely.
This is about the community. I can tell you that, being an administrator, your world can be a little bit chaotic sometimes about, should you be in a certain district? Are you welcome there? Have you worn your welcome out? And I know in the process of becoming the principal here, my wife just said, I just want to make sure we move to a district that, if something happens to you in your position, my kids are still, I said, and after a year or two here, before we actually moved up and I took the job, I said, Jefferson's it. I said, if I'm not the fit there long term or whatever it is, and I don't, life is what it is, and I always believe there's a spot for people that are working hard and doing the right thing. But I said, if I'm there or not, our kids will be fine there, and that has not wavered, and it's been a great place for us too. But my goodness, it's not only great to see. It seems like I've seen you a lot this year, which has been awesome. I see your sister. You know what's kind of crazy? We still have yet to hire a JHS graduate as a teacher, 6 through 12.
Oh, were they all in the little buildings?
That we have elementary, but you kind of talk about different dynamics and stuff. And I brought that up to some superintendents the other day. I said, they all kind of were like, wow, our staffs are loaded with people that went to. I said, yeah, we're still looking for that first one, and there haven't been too many that have gotten into education or even really applied. I don't remember one graduate applying for a teaching job 7 through 12. I could be wrong on that, but
It's coming.
it's coming.
It's absolutely coming.
It's coming. It's going to be a neat deal. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
This is the preservation. Next year will be the 75th year of the consolidation of the school district, so this is all going to time out well. And thank you guys for being here and everything you did, not only today, but in getting this place up and running, because the students had a huge role in that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.